You are born. You open your eyes for the first time in a dim, quiet room, and from that very first day, you start learning faces. You learn your mother's face before you can say her name. You learn your father's face, your sibling's face, the face of the first stranger who ever smiled at you. Faces are the first thing the human brain learns to recognize. And yet, for most of the time you've been alive, there is one face you have never truly seen. Your own. This wasn't some small, forgettable gap in daily life. It was total. It touched every single day, every social interaction, every private moment alone. You could describe your best friend's face in perfect detail. The shape of their eyebrows, the gap in their teeth, the way their nose tilts slightly to one side. And you would have no idea what your own face looked like. Doing that exact same thing, right now, in the world you live in. You catch your own reflection dozens of times before lunch. A phone screen going dark, a shop window, a bathroom mirror you barely even notice anymore. For nearly all of the 300,000 years humans have existed, that experience simply did not exist. Some people were born, grew up, fell in love, raised children, grew old, and died, having only ever seen a faint, shifting suggestion of their own face, reflected once in a puddle of rainwater. So why was a clear reflection almost impossible to get? There are three real reasons. 1. Water only works under very specific conditions. It has to be completely still, the moment wind touches it, or a fish moves beneath the surface. Even your own breath disturbs the image, and it scatters into ripples and disappears. 2. Polished metal required serious metallurgical skill. Skill most communities simply did not have. You needed someone who could smelt copper, someone who could hammer it into a thin, even disc, and someone who could polish it for hours, until it finally held a reflection. 3. Even the very first man-made mirrors are extraordinarily rare. Polished obsidian discs from Neolithic Anatolia, some more than 8,500 years old, are the oldest confirmed mirrors humans ever made. And archaeologists have found fewer than 60 of them across the entire ancient world. So if almost nobody had access to a clear reflection, how did anyone ever find out what they looked like? The very first mirror was never built by anyone. It was simply found. A still pond at dawn, a puddle left behind after rain, or a bowl of water lit by firelight at night. It was blurry and unreliable, and it vanished the instant you touched it. But for tens of thousands of years, it was the only face check humans had. Then, around 6,500 years before our time, in what is now central Turkey, someone did something nobody had done before. They took a piece of obsidian, a volcanic glass sharp enough to cut skin, and spent enormous time grinding one side down, over and over for hours, until it held a clear, stable reflection. Archaeologists call these the oldest known man-made mirrors. But here's the strange part nobody expects. These mirrors are almost never found in homes. They keep turning up in graves. Centuries later, in ancient Egypt, mirrors of polished copper, later bronze, appeared, common enough to become ordinary grave goods. Buried the same way a comb might be, something rare and almost sacred had quietly become an ordinary household item. Centuries after that, the Romans went further still, backing thin glass with a layer of metal to create the first true glass mirrors. Owning your reflection was still rare enough to feel dangerous. A belief spread that breaking one brought 7 years of bad luck. A superstition that still lingers today. It would still take 1,000 more years to reach a glass-making breakthrough in Renaissance Venice, where artisans learned to back glass with silver, finally making a clear mirror affordable for an ordinary person to actually own. Before that single breakthrough, for most of human history, truly knowing your own face was not a given. It was a privilege. And here's the part that changes everything. Those first Anatolian mirrors, placed beside the dead, were not buried next to combs, or jewelry, or anything for looking good. They were buried next to small dishes of pigment, red, yellow, and blue, the same colors used in burial rituals everywhere, which suggests the mirror wasn't there for vanity. It may have helped the dead recognize themselves in whatever came next, which means it wasn't invented for vanity at all. It may have been invented for the opposite reason, to help someone find their own face again, after they had already lost everything else. Modern psychologists actually test this directly. They put a small mark on a baby's face and place them in front of a mirror. Most babies under 18 months reach for the mirror, not for their own face. They simply don't yet know that's them. Chimpanzees and elephants can pass this same test. Most other animals never do. Recognizing your own reflection is not automatic. It has to be learned, and for most of history. Most humans barely got the chance to learn it at all, for almost the entire time humans have existed. Nobody built their sense of self by looking in a mirror, because for nearly everyone, there usually wasn't one. You were known by your voice, by your walk, by the shape of your hands, and by the people who remembered your face when you yourself never could. The face in the glass is one of the newest parts of us. Almost everything else about knowing who you are, we figured out long before it ever existed. Anatolia wasn't the only place this happened, thousands of miles away and centuries later. Aztec priests carried their own obsidian mirrors, ground from the same kind of volcanic glass. But nobody used these mirrors to check their appearance. They used them to speak with the gods. One god was even named after it, Smoking Mirror, a god of fate and shadows. Two unrelated cultures, an ocean apart. Both reached for the same material, and both used it for the same reason. Not to look at themselves, but to see something beyond themselves entirely. Making one single copper mirror took real time. First, the ore had to be mined, then heated until it separated from the rock, then poured, cooled, and reheated again. Only then could the polishing even begin. A single mirror could take a skilled worker days, which is exactly why almost nobody had one. A car's side mirror, a video call with the camera on. Even a spoon can show your reflection now. We are surrounded by our own reflection constantly. It has become so normal, it is almost invisible. This is called the mirror self-recognition test. A psychologist named Gordon Gallup first designed it, back in 1970 using chimpanzees. Dolphins and magpies can pass it too. A surprisingly short list of species. Human toddlers usually pass it around age 2. Before that age, the mirror means nothing personal. It's just another moving object in the room. Self-recognition, it turns out, is something built, not something we simply arrive with. Think about how strange that actually is. You know exactly how you sound when you laugh. You know exactly how your hands move when you talk. But your own face, doing all of that, was, for most of history, a total mystery to you. Think of everyone who ever loved you. None of them needed a mirror to know you. They just needed you. Maybe that was always enough. This idea didn't stop with the Aztecs or Anatolia. Across many cultures, a strange belief kept reappearing, that a mirror could hold a piece of you, something more than just your reflection. In some traditions, mirrors were covered after a death, so a departing soul wouldn't get trapped inside one. In others, a shattered mirror meant your soul had broken too. None of these cultures had ever spoken to each other, and yet they all landed on the same instinct. A mirror was never just glass and metal. It was something closer to a threshold, a place where the self and something else met. Bronze mirrors were also being cast in ancient China, cast with elaborate patterns on their reverse side, often buried in tombs, just like in Egypt. 3 unrelated civilizations, 3 separate mirror traditions, all arriving at the same conclusion, alone. For most of human history, that was simply unanswerable. You could ask a friend to describe you, but their words were never quite the same as seeing it. Even your own children would grow up knowing your face better than you ever would yourself. Photographs didn't exist for most of human history either, so even a frozen, remembered image of yourself was impossible. Even kings and pharaohs rarely owned a truly clear mirror. Reflection, for almost all of history, was a luxury good. Word of these new mirrors spread slowly across Europe, carried along trade routes, city by city. For a long time, only the wealthy could afford one. It would take centuries more to reach ordinary homes. Even today, this test tells researchers something important. Not just about vanity, but about self-awareness itself. The understanding that you are a separate being watched by the world around you. So next time you glance at your own reflection, notice how easy, how automatic that moment feels. For almost everyone who ever lived before you, that moment simply never came.